The Buffalo Bills have made a trade and the path to becoming salary cap compliant. We've got plenty to cover today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. We've got a lot to cover today. My original plan for the show was to talk about the Buffalo Bills cap position and their path to becoming salary cap compliant. And we're still going to do that, but we also have a trade to reflect upon. Late on Monday evening, the Buffalo Bills announced that they are sending Ryan Bates to the Chicago Bears in exchange for a 2024 fifth-round pick, and that pick winds up coming in at number 143 overall. Ryan Bates has been a good depth player for the Buffalo Bills. There's no doubt about it. Provides positional flexibility, a reliable starter, by all indications, a valued member of the locker room, had good relationships with everybody. But he just didn't have a path to starting in Buffalo, and I think he viewed himself as a starter. And with O'Cyrus Torrence and Connor McGovern locked in as the guards, with Mitch Morse presumably back as the starting center, Ryan Bates was running out of time to become a starter, and it feels like the Bills did right by the player by putting him in a position to have that opportunity to start for the Chicago Bears, where there's a pretty clear path for that to happen. No path in Buffalo, barring injury. I do think that this is a very clear sign that Mitch Morse is back. That's always been my expectation. If you've listened to this podcast throughout the offseason, I never really doubted that Mitch Morse would be back. Now, there's some cap dynamics with Mitch Morse returning that we're going to talk about here in the next segment, but I think you can rely on Mitch Morse coming back as the Bills starting center. I think this is a clear sign that the Bills have some confidence in the development of Alec Anderson. And honestly, Alec Anderson could be the entire key to this trade. Because on one hand, you feel like Alec Anderson and Ryan Bates, they're redundant players. Now, Ryan Bates is a proven player in that role of being able to fill in at all five spots. But Alec Anderson has also been trained to play all five spots. Spent a year on the practice squad in 2022, was on the active roster all of 2023, and he's positioning himself to be a game day active player in 2024. The Bills must have some level of confidence in his development and his ability to be Ryan Bates for this team. And again, maybe the Bills looked at their offensive line depth and felt like there was some redundancy between Bates and Anderson. I also find myself very hopeful right now that David Edwards is back as a reserve interior offensive lineman, a guy that I think is an NFL starting caliber player that could step in at left or right guard. And did a phenomenal job as a jumbo tight end, a utility blocker. And I think the biggest thing is that you hope that the offensive line health, the good health that the Bills enjoyed last year, the same starters every single game, will continue in 2024. Because the reality is, it's fine to not have Ryan Bates until all of a sudden you wish you had Ryan Bates. Hopefully it's a win-win for all teams and all parties involved. Hopefully Ryan Bates becomes a good starter for the Chicago Bears, and hopefully the Bills look at this trade and feel like, yeah, you know what, we didn't need Ryan Bates, and we got a draft pick, And we're really excited about the development of some of our other younger players. Now, there is a cap benefit for the Buffalo Bills making this trade, maybe not as much as you hope. But as of the current language of the contract for Ryan Bates, this is going to clear $1.4 million in cap space for the Buffalo Bills. They are scheduled to accumulate $4 million in dead cap accumulation. Now, I'm curious to see what the actual specifics are. I would guess that this deal is structured in a way that gives the Bills more cap relief and less of a dead cap hit. So stay tuned on that piece because I think there's some more specifics coming in that regard. I feel like the Bills, in order to do this trade, they would want more of a cap benefit. And the current scheduled cap benefit is very, very modest. This does put Brandon Beane in a position where he owns 11 picks currently in the 2024 NFL Draft. 11. It's a healthy amount of draft picks. That includes a first, second, third, fourth round pick, 3 fifth-round picks, 3 sixth-round picks, and a 7th-round pick. Now, boy, we know that Brandon Beane is not going to stick and pick 11 times. There's no chance of that. No chance. So whether all of this ammunition kind of in the 4th, 5th, 6th round area, maybe that positions the Bills to have a couple of trades up. I think the Bills will wind up picking a fair amount of players. I would guess at least 7, probably 8 players. But they have 11 picks. And you can see this being used in a very specific way to go target and trade up for guys. That's what Brandon Beane's done throughout his tenure with the Buffalo Bills with 11 draft picks. Right now, I think that will absolutely continue. So here's the bottom line. The Bills get an extra draft pick. They get a little extra cap space. And they become weaker when it comes to offensive line depth. I think it's that simple. I'm a little surprised by this. I thought Ryan Bates would continue in that reserve role. But I think the Bills probably did right by the player and gave him a chance to go start. Got a little bit more draft flexibility, a little bit more cap space. But like I said earlier, it's fine to not have Ryan Bates until you wish you had Ryan Bates. And hopefully the Bills aren't in that position. Hopefully David Edwards is back. Hopefully Alec Anderson is developing at a rate that makes us feel good about him just being Ryan Bates on this team without having to have Ryan Bates and Alec Anderson. So those are my thoughts on this trade. Obviously a big puzzle. And the one thing that I will implore you is that as we navigate this offseason, don't ride the roller coaster because Brandon Beane doesn't have to have the roster set next week, a month from now, 2 months from now. This is about what it looks like in September. So let the entire offseason play out before you find yourself in the extreme highs or the extreme lows of the inevitable fluidity of the roster this time of year. Please, I beg you. All right, folks. In order for Brandon Beane to shape this roster, he's going to have to become cap compliant. The rest of this podcast is going to be dedicated to presenting the full menu of levers that Brandon Beane can pull to become cap compliant. So we're going to break down all of that here in just a moment. So be sure to stick with me. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever considered what you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you exercise, read, spend some time with family and friends, maybe catch up on some sleep? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you, make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters most to you so you can do more of it. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk about this Buffalo Bills cap position and what Brandon Beane can do to become cap compliant. And he's got to do it within the next week. So a bunch of moves are coming, folks. A lot of restructures, potentially some extensions, potentially some released players, because that new league year starts next week. And Brandon Beane has to have this team cap compliant. And so as of right now, according to SpotRack.com, the Bills are $35.18 million over the salary cap, and that does include the release of Nyheim Hines, which saved $4.66 million, the restructure of Connor McGovern and his contract, and the assumed $1.4 million in savings from Ryan Bates. Now, again, stay tuned there. I feel like the parameters of that deal will change the amount of cap relief that the Bills get in a positive way for the Bills. So I think it's going to be more than that. But right now, let's assume the Bills are $35.18 million over the cap. And so my objective the rest of the way here is to present a menu of options that Brandon Beane has to become cap compliant. We'll work through it by talking about the players he can release, and there be a benefit to the Bills' salary cap, the players that he can restructure, and the extension candidates. We'll start with the players he can release. He's already released Nyheim Hines. And let me tell you this, I'm going to give you all the options. These aren't necessarily moves that I would advocate for. But I want to make you aware of all the options because I think it's going to take a level of creativity from Brandon Beane to get this done. He could release Tre'Davious White and free up $6 million in cap space. It's a tough conversation. Like, let's just be honest about it. It's a tough conversation. Trey White's been such a great player for this football team. He's been such an important part of this glow up, right? And the Bills changing who they are within the landscape of the NFL. He's also had 2 major injuries in the last 3 years. Pushing 30 years old, he's a cornerback. And you're pretty set at corner. Like, even if you didn't have Tre'Davious White, you still have Rasul Douglas. You still have Christian Benford. You still have Kyrie Elam. And so you can release Trey White and free up $6 million. Or you can find a way to keep him on the roster that makes sense. But look, right now he's one of your highest paid players, and that's a tough position to be in when it's a complete unknown what you're going to get from Tre'Davious White moving forward. Like I started the conversation, it's just a hard conversation. It is. But those are the dynamics, and the Bills could release Tre'Davious White for $6 million in savings. The next one I'll bring up is center Mitch Morse. I think with the trade of Ryan Bates, you can pretty much lock in Mitch Morse as the Bills starting center in 2024. I'm happy about that. I think he's a really good football player. He's just aging, and there's an opportunity to get out of his contract, right? He's 32 years old. The Bills could cut Mitch Morse and save $8.5 million. He's the player on the team that the Bills can cut that would save like the most in cap space outside of Rasul Douglas, but I don't think that's a possibility. So is Mitch Morse back, but on a reduced salary? Do they extend him and push this out another year? There's some options here, but straight up the Bills could cut Mitch Morse and free up $8.5 million. I don't think that will happen. I think something could happen because you have some flexibility with this contract. The next player, Jordan Poyer. The Bills could cut Jordan Poyer and save $5.72 million in cap space. It's a tough decision to make. I don't think this was Jordan Poyer's most impactful season in 2023. There's no question. I think playing the largest amount of snaps of his career as a second-level defender in the box took away from maximizing his impact and production, but he did what he had to do to help the team after Matt Milano got injured. I think there's a benefit to not replacing Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in the same season. But you also free up $5.72 million by cutting Jordan Poyer, who's an aging player coming off of his least impactful season. I would understand either decision that the Bills make on this deal. Deonte Harty. Bills can cut Deonte Harty and free $4.2 million in cap space. That's a possibility. I can see the Bills approaching Deonte Harty and saying, look, we can cut you, and you can go test the open market. And I don't think you're going to find $4.2 million, whatever he's scheduled to make. But we'll bring you back for $2 million. And so maybe you keep Deonte Harty on a reduced salary, which would make a lot of sense. I think there's a path to that happening. And he continues as your punt returner, a depth wide receiver, a guy that at least has a year under his belt establishing chemistry with Josh Allen, and of course has been around Joe Brady and the guys, which puts him in an advantageous position over anybody that they bring in at wide receiver. The Bills can cut Teron Neal, special teams player, and save $2.9 million. I think Teron Neal is a quality special teams player. But you have to ask yourself some hard questions. Well, can you move on and create that cap space and get a different player for less? Is Teron Neal a player that you approach about, hey, look, we need to do something with this contract? We'll see on Teron Neal. Reggie Gilliam, the Bills can cut Reggie Gilliam and save $1.9 million. Again, I wouldn't anticipate that happening. Good special teams player. They'll want a fullback for 8, 10, 12 snaps a game. Reggie Gilliam does a nice job with that, but the Bills could cut him and save $1.9 million. Punter Sam Martin, the Bills could cut him and free up $1.35 million. Now you need to sign a punter, right? Like that would be, you still have to find one. I don't know that you want to mess with this. Sam Martin's not an overly expensive punter. He's at least an average caliber punter. He's been a good holder for Tyler Bass. But you can release him and save $1.35 million. Safety Damar Hamlin, the Bills could cut him and free up $1 million. Kind of surprising based on him being a 6th-round draft pick entering his 4th season. But there's some cap benefit if the Bills wanted to move on from Damar Hamlin, who was mostly an inactive player last year. I know there's some PR dynamics there, but if you don't think it's going to happen with Damar Hamlin and you want to free up $1 million, you can do it. And the last player the Bills could release where I feel like there's a reasonable benefit is a long snapper, Reid Ferguson. You could save $1.2 million. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Reid Ferguson is going to be the Bills' long snapper. He's been a valuable piece of this team. Seems like he has a great relationship with the team, with the fans. Like, I don't think the Bills would be eager to do that, and you'd have to replace him. But again, I'm trying to present the full menu. And so the full menu of releasing players creates an opportunity to save $32.77 million if you pull every single lever that I just went through. I don't think you're going to. You're going to pull some of them. You're going to look at some of these guys, and I think there's some pay cut conversations to be had. But as we consider what Brandon Beane can do in the next week to become cap compliant, releasing some of these players and being mindful of these players and their contracts is important for us as we anticipate what moves are coming over the next week. So those are the released players. Next up, we're going to talk about restructuring contracts. We're going to talk about some players the Bills can extend. So be sure to stick with us. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. FanDuel also has hockey, footballs, futures, whatever sports you're into, FanDuel has some action that you can check out, and this deal is incredible. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. So check it out. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, folks, let's talk about restructure candidates. Let's talk about extension candidates. And we'll finish this out by considering just how much cap space by Brandon Beane can create through these moves. So restructure candidates, there's several of those. The most obvious one, the one that you can guarantee will happen, is Josh Allen. And let me say this about restructuring before we really get into the weeds here. Restructuring a player basically all you're doing is you're reducing their base salary and then extending it out. You're taking that money and pushing it into future years. The player's not taking any less money. These are typically already agreed to within the parameters of the contract that they sign. Like for Josh Allen, he doesn't have to agree to anything. This is already agreed to. It's already in the contract. So the benefit is you create cap space. The downside is you connect yourself to a player for longer, which in some situations is good, in some situations is bad. And that will come up in this conversation right now. Josh Allen, very good, right? That guy's going to be around, no questions. You restructure his contract and you free up $23.1 million. So of the 35 that's left for Brandon Beane to create, one swipe of the pen, whatever you want to say, $23.1 million is gained by restructuring Josh Allen. That's going to happen. Now, the next two are players that you can free up a bunch of money by restructuring, but you might not want to stay connected to these players. Stefon Diggs. The Bills can restructure Stefon Diggs and free up $13.2 million. You wish you felt better about doing that, right? $13.2 million to tie yourself to who's been like the most productive receiver ever for the Buffalo Bills in a 4-year stretch. Your number one receiver, right? Like you'd love to connect yourself. You'd love to want to connect yourself to that player. The reality is it's complicated. And so you'd love to free up that $13.2 million, but do you want to stay locked in on Stefon Diggs with how weird it's been the last 2 off seasons? To me, if he's your guy, he's your guy. Is it more about concern with his relationship with the team, or is the concern more north of 30, aging skill set, and the decline in production down the stretch last year? Because if you feel confident that Stefon Diggs is going to be a valued member of your team and he's going to continue to produce for a few more seasons, you restructure this deal, no questions asked. The problem is you have lots of questions to ask. Same thing with Von Miller. Von Miller, the Bills can restructure his contract and free up $12.1 million. Are you going to do that? No way, right? No way you can lock yourself in for more Von Miller at his age based on what he showed last year coming off of that ACL tear. So that's what's disappointing. You got like over $25 million that you could create in restructuring Stefon Diggs and Von Miller, who are supposed to be franchise cornerstones for you. And you don't want to do it for either player. It's complicated. The Bills can restructure tight end Dawson Knox for $6 million in cap savings. You think about it, like on one hand, Dawson Knox is an overpaid tight end. There's no question about it. I think he's a better player, obviously, than he showed last year. But $14 million a year is just, that's too much for Dawson Knox. But I think his conversation's different than Diggs and Miller. You're just worried about maximizing the player. I think he could be a useful piece of your team. And you get $6 million in cap savings. I'd much rather restructure Dawson Knox than Diggs or Miller, to be honest with you. You can restructure linebacker Matt Milano, yet that would free up $2.44 million. Ed Oliver, you can restructure for a savings of $3.94 million. I think the most obvious ones to me are Josh Allen and Ed Oliver. Those guys are young. They're going to be around. No questions asked. And that frees up, almost $27 million combined from those two guys. Then I think you get a little bit interested in Dawson Knox and Matt Milano. And I think you have a lot of questions if you were to restructure Stefon Diggs or Von Miller. Now, one thing that I will point out in those numbers that I gave you, it doesn't take into account the possibility that Brandon Beane could tack on void years to the end of these contracts. And what void years accomplish is you're able to sign a player to the money that they want, and it's fair market, but you're paying it well into future years that you don't anticipate having the player on your team. And so that's happened already with Connor McGovern. The Bills converted $4.7 million of Connor McGovern's 2024 base salary into a signing bonus, added 2 void years, and that cleared $3.74 million in cap space. Now, here's the reality of that. You get your cap space now, but Connor McGovern is not signed to play on the team in 2026, 27, or 28, and the Bills will be paying him regardless. In 2026, they're going to be charging $4.8 million against their cap for the void years of Connor McGovern. In 2027, $1.9 million. In 2028, $935,000. The Bills have void years right now that they're dealing with this coming year, regardless if these players are re-signed or not. Leonard Floyd is going to count $4.4 million against the Bills cap. Micah Hyde's going to count $3.4 million against the Bills cap. Daquan Jones, $1.8 million. Tim Settle, $1.35 million, because they've signed players or extended players or restructured players that tax on void years. And so this is the practical application of how that hurts you in future years. It helps you now, hurts you in future years. Like the Bills are going to have like almost $12, $13 million this year paying for Floyd, Hyde, Jones, and Settle. And I would guess that at least 3 of them are not back on this team. And so in 2026, when Connor McGovern's not or 2027, when he's not a Buffalo Bill and they're paying him $2 million. Remember, I told you this back in March of 2024. So that's I would say that to say that some of those numbers could be higher if they're willing to do the void years and if they want to do the void years. But right now, Brandon Beane can free up $60.78 million in cap space through the restructure opportunities that I just discussed. Now, lastly, and we'll work through this quickly because I did an entire podcast on this, in terms of extensions, players the Bills can extend their contract and reduce their salary in 2024 and extend it out to future years. And so regardless of what the parameters of the deal are, like what the money is, and in the podcast that I did a couple weeks ago, I talked about what I thought the money would be. The savings is the same because you're taking it down to a minimum and then you're extending it out for 2 additional seasons. So it doesn't matter if they sign a 3-year $50 million deal or a 3-year $20 million deal. The cap savings right now are the same. 3 very logical, should do extensions in my opinion. Offensive tackle Dion Dawkins, you can extend him and free up $6.5 million. Cornerback Taron Johnson, $4.5 million in 2024 cap savings. And cornerback Rasul Douglas, you can extend him and get $6 million in 2024 cap savings. Now you can also release Rasul Douglas. I want to give you the full menu. You can release him or trade him, and that would free up $9 million in cap space. I just extend him, keep him around, enjoy his services, and save $6 million this year. So there's $17 million in savings to be had by extending Rasul Douglas, Dion Dawkins, and Taron Johnson. So in total, the Bills, like I said, are $35 million over the cap. But through restructures where they can free up $60.78 million, releasing players where they could free up $32.77 million, and extensions where they can free up $17 million, the Bills have $110.55 million in cap flexibility that they can create. So they can go from negative 35 all the way up to, you have 110.55 in space. So you could do that math. You could create, I don't know what, almost, I'm terrible at math, so $70 million or something like that. Now, you're not going to pull all those levers, but I think it should give you some optimism about how the Bills can get out of this cap position. I mean, 23 from Josh Allen, 17 from those extensions. Boom. You're 15 to the good. And you're still going to do a couple of those other things. So, yeah, look, you don't want to be $35 million over. The Bills were, 50-something million over at one point. So they're getting there. They will get there. They have to get there. And this is what I would be staying tuned for over the next week as Brandon Beane starts to actually pull these levers. He already has started with, again, releasing Hines, restructuring McGovern, trading away Bates. Plenty more to come, and we will break it all down for you every step of the way here on Locked On Bills. it's going to be busy moving forward. We got free agency next week, and that'll carry through a few weeks. We got the draft to get ready for. We have the draft. Before you know it, you're going to see rookies for rookie minicamp in May. So lots to cover here on the podcast. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.